Well, good morning, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 prop stream for the Travelers Championship. Gonna get you guys ready for the final day of action with a look at the prop boards and Underdog and Prize Picks. We'll talk matchups on the sports books as well, and overall give you guys a game plan and strategy for tomorrow to hopefully crush our exposure and finish this week strong. But hopefully all of you are having a fantastic Saturday. It's the weekend. We should be having some fun out there ourselves. The only thing better than adding on top of some good friends with fun with friends and family would be to add on top of it on the bankroll here. So see, we got Josh down there, Odell as well with the Henley call. My bankroll would love that with the outright exposure I've got in there. So let's best of luck out there to my guy Russ. We got Joseph in the live chat as well. Hit me up with any specific bets you want me to deep dive a little bit later on, everyone. Also smash the like button as you guys are getting into this live stream. And even if you guys don't have anything for me down there in the chat to break down, don't be shy to go out there and say hi as well. Whether you're on the replay crew, we'd love you guys here after the fact too. Make sure to smash the like button if you're a part of that too. And the live crew, a little bit of extra love for everyone down there. And you've got Tommy Ladd. That is a great spot to be in. And I remember that from the live stream yesterday. Best of luck, man. It's going to be great if he can punch that ticket. I think everyone is rooting him for him at this point. But he's going to be battling some demons out there. So it's going to be much must-watch TV. Thoroughly looking forward to it. But let's start it off with the course conditions, get an idea of what to expect for Sunday, which is going to be a little bit of a windier day. So these are the round 3 averages that I have on the screen right now. I'm going to go ahead and make them a little bit larger just so you guys can see the entire thing. -2 scoring average, 4.59 birdies or better per round. Bogey average, which is a hair under 2.3 per round. And the fairway and green averages went up quite significantly compared to round 2. So round 2 was extremely windy. Tomorrow's just going to be kind of windy for round 4. So it's going to be something in between the last 2 days. It's not going to play over par like what we had for the second day, but also not going to play to a -1, a -2 scoring average like we had for days 1 and 2. So I personally think it's going to play like a half a stroke to 1 stroke under. I think 0.75 strokes under par would be the exact number I gave if I had to predict the field average. Birdie rate going to drop quite substantially as well. I think to at most about 4 birdies per round. And I think the bogey or worse average is probably going to jump up to at least 2.6, 2.7 bogeys or worse per round. So expect to see a little bit of a different golf course tomorrow, maybe even an entire stroke difference from day to day. And it's not only the fact that the weather does look a little bit windier, I'll show you that in a second, but also the Sunday pin location, which looks a little bit trickier than what you had for round 3. So the fairway average could drop a little bit as well, maybe to about 8.5, perhaps even a little bit lower than that for the round tomorrow. And then the green average, I think, could jump even more down to like maybe 12 GIRs per round. Like I said, slightly harder conditions for Sunday's action. And just to show you that weather forecast that I was foreshadowing, a little bit of rain that's coming through around 9, 10 a.m. And then afterwards, close to 10 to 15 miles an hour sustained winds, wind gusts that at one point are close to 30 miles an hour, but a little bit more consistently at that 20 miles an hour mark, which is it's a lot more significant than what we had for round number 3. So that's why I'm expecting some of those changes. That's not to say that you're not going to get a few guys that have low rounds, particularly some of your elite tier players could still shoot something like -4, -5. You're still going to have 5+ birdie rounds, for example, but it's not going to be nearly as prevalent as today. I mean, today you had over half the field that were posting 5 birdies or better. Tomorrow, it'll probably only be like 20 to 30% of the field that are able to accomplish that. So slightly different set of conditions. Not going to go hole by hole and show you guys every single pin location, but it's your classical Sunday setup. I would say maybe a hair easier than what we normally see. That's probably because the forecast looks as windy as it does. But like holes like 3 stand out is really easy one. 6, the par 5 is the easiest pin location that we get at that hole. 10's a pretty difficult long par 4. That's also a little bit of a softer pin location there. 12, 2. Even 16's pretty easy for a Sunday at this golf course. But you also still have some tricky pin locations like you have at 14 and 15. 11's a difficult one in that back little corner of the par 3. Hole number 1, so right off the bat, you get a really tricky pin location. So I would say a little bit of a harder setup than round number 3, but maybe not quite what we always see around this golf course. So I still think it's going to play harder than what you saw for even round 1 when it played closer to a -1. But I don't think it's going to play over par like we had for round number 2. So it's I gave you guys those averages. The pin locations not having as big an impact, I would say, just because they softened it up in a few different spots. But depending on the wind direction, like some of these longer par 4s could be a half a stroke, a 0.3, a 0.4 over stroke scoring average, and pretty brutally difficult compared to today. So let's go through some of our exposure next. So we go through the underdog and prize pick stuff, and then we'll go through a few matchups. Any sort of bets that you want me to deep dive, we're going to go through those towards the end. But let's start with underdog, I guess. The underdog slip that we're going to mix in is going to be first off an over on Viktor Hovland birdies, and then I'm pairing it up with a Pendrith over on strokes. So let's bring up Pendrith. Let's mix them in here. This payout is different than when I took it. For my Patreon members, they did get that at even money for Viktor Hovland. So this was a 3.24x payout if you were over there. That's part of the power of being a part of my Patreon page. That, of course, is where I post all my exposure as soon as I'm entering it. On the live streams here, we go through a few slips for any given slate, some matchups as well as I entered, very early on in the research process. But for every single slip that I'm entering and them as soon as they're dropping, so you can get that value, hopefully before any sort of line movement, make sure to join the Patreon page for that. But Viktor Hovland, the reason why I liked that over is he's one of the best players in the field with shots gained ball striking. If we take a look at that list, he's number 2 in the category. But if we just look at shots gained off the tee, approach play, I should say, not off the tee play, he's number 1 with the irons out of anyone in the field. So I love that for Viktor. The short game has been his crux over the first few rounds, losing strokes in both categories. But today he figured it out. He did gain strokes on the greens, which was great to see for Viktor Hovland. But the most important part of the game, really all I care about with him, is how well he's hitting the irons. And it hasn't even just been this week. The U.S. Open, he had a great week with the ball striking. His win at the Valspar, also all the weeks around that, he was gaining 1.5 shots gained approach per round. It's a vintage Viktor Hovland stuff. So give me that over. It's not going to be there's not going to be a bunch of overs on birdies, a bunch of unders on strokes that you're going to see me mixing in. But if I'm going to take that sort of thing, I want it to be an elite tier player in the category. I want it to be somebody that is hitting the ball well, right? He's number 1 in shots gained approach, setting up by far the most looks for birdie out of anyone in the field. And just to show you the stats with the birdie or better percentage, it's not as good as it could be for Hovland because he's really starting to heat up lately. But even with the really cold start, he's number 21 on tour in birdie or better percentage. And he only plays in the signature field events. He only plays in the hardest fields, the hardest golf courses that we have on tour. Right, this week, it's maybe not a great example of that, but right, he doesn't play at the slapdick birdie fest like the Amex, right? He only plays at really hard golf courses, at most maybe like average difficulty golf courses. And despite that, he's still number 21. And this isn't birdie or better percentage gained, right? This is just the raw number. So that's why I can get thrown off a little bit based on what golf tournament specific players are playing. If anything, it's even more favorable for Viktor Hovland. So you can get that for 2.98x, it looks like, on the underdog side. I believe both are available on prize picks. So I think now the better spot to mix it in would be over here just because you're getting slightly better value. So let's see. So there's the Hovland prop. I believe they have Pendrith at the same number. So let's see. So yeah, he's also at 68.5. You play it here, you can get a 3x payout. So it's a ever so slightly better value in terms of the payout if you take it over here on the prize pick side. But either way, 2 props that I already mixed in at this point that I thought were value. Let's talk about the Pendrith one. So by the way, Viktor Hovland, if I want to show you some of the sportsbook lines, let's go over here to birdies are better. Viktor Hovland is -135 towards the over. So you would say maybe slight value in that direction. Not the whole reason for wanting to take this sort of thing. Pendrith isn't even valued towards the over, but I actually feel better about this Pendrith prop than what I do with the other one. So Pendrith is minus 125 towards the over. So maybe the ever so slightest value in that direction. Usually we're looking for closer to minus 135, minus 140 odds to truly call it like a plus EV value. What I like here with Pendrith is that the shots gained profile is not as favorable for him. So if we take a look at round 3 in particular, he gained over 6 strokes with the short game categories. That just screams unsustainability in those two, and he lost strokes on approach. And if you take a look at his entire week, I mean, look at the short game. I mean, he's gained like 7.5 strokes in those categories. That is not something that he's used to doing. He's much more of a ball striking player, and the ball striking, which is normally his calling card, he's lost almost 4 strokes between the off the tee and approach play. So he's kind of struggling. He's going to be going off when it's windy out there. He's got a high ball flight, which could be an issue if it's going to be gustier. And if I think the scoring average is going to be like -1, so like 69, maybe even lower than that. Maybe it's like 16, sorry, higher, I guess. 69.5, only like a half a stroke under par. Then, I mean, he could have an average, even a slightly above average day, and still go over this sort of a line. So that's why I like those two. The 3x payout I thought was fair on them. The 3.24x that I got on the Patreon page is maybe just a little bit better than that. So obviously check out the Patreon and join it if you guys haven't already for access to all of those slips. And then we're also going to have a combination here on Prize Picks, but let's say hi to my guy Antonio in chat. We also have Ross down there too. He said, what is the biggest comeback in Travelers history? Or is this a tournament where you have to be towards the top to win? So I don't have that off the top of my head. I wasn't watching the broadcast towards the end. I'm sure they probably mentioned it at some point, but I know that there have been a lot of comebacks at this golf course. So I don't know how far like is too far in terms of a comeback, but probably like 4 or 5 shots, especially with it playing under par. I wouldn't want guys that are starting like 7 or 8 shots back. What's going on, Lenny? He said, what the heck is an all-world par? Broadcasts say it all the time. Yeah, that's so essentially what it means, Lenny, is that somebody was way out of position. Somebody was behind a tree. It looked like they were making bogey at best, and then they pulled a par out of their ass. So sometimes it's like chipping in for a par. Sometimes it's making like a 20, 25 footer for par on the greens. That's what they mean by that. And it's another way of saying like somebody got bailed out in a really shitty situation. But yeah, it's not a very intuitive term there. So hopefully that helps you. He said Tommy can't keep this up. He's playing like Tiger. We'll see. Golf's a crazy sport. We've seen a lot of chokes over the years, but he's playing lights out golf. Today, he gained over 3 strokes short game. That is unsustainable. He's not going to shoot that low of a score again just based on that alone. Like, he's going to have to flip the ball striking a little bit more to shoot something super low. But I think he probably shoots like -2, -3. I think he's going to be in the picture to win this thing at the very least, if not the clear favorite to go out there and punch his first ever winning ticket. So I'll be rooting for him a little bit. I have no like monetary value on him actually getting it done. I bet Russell Henley, so I am very partial to him getting the dub, but I think Tommy Ladd's got a really good chance to do so. So we'll see. And I don't think he's going to play as wildly good as he has the first few days, though. And then he said if Keegan shoots -4, does he win? You could see Tommy shooting even. Yeah, the pressure is going to be a thing. He could totally shoot even par. I think that's within his range of outcomes. I mean, if Keegan shoots -4, Tommy shoots even, that might get the job done. But there are enough guys lurking. Like, I mean, you have Henley at that same number 2 that could shoot -4, -5 himself. He'll have at least a fighting chance if that's the case. It's really setting up to be a fun Sunday. I know that much for sure. Let's talk through the Prize Picks props that I've already mixed in. So first off, it's this Justin Thomas over on birdies. And then the second prop is an over on Tom Kim bogeys. So let's start with the positive stance play on Justin Thomas. JT, if we take a look at his line on the sports books, which again, this isn't really the main reasoning for getting there, but I do like to give you guys some perspective onto any potential line value. He's -140 towards the over. And if you guys know Justin Thomas, you'll know that he's the #1 birdie maker in all the PGA Tour. So if we're going to take anyone for an over on birdies, it's the guy that's the best out of anyone that we have in the field. And he doesn't have an ideal tee time. He is going off at 1 p.m., but he's got to be aggressive to try and make up ground. He had a terrible round today, just like Scotty Scheffler in the final grouping. And at this point, right, he doesn't care about finishing top 25. He cares about trying to get into that top 3, top 5. So I expect him to go pin hunting and then other thing about Justin Thomas that helps us here is, sure, there's a little bit of line value, but he plays extremely well in windy conditions. Look no further than round 2 this week when you had even harder conditions than what we're going to have for tomorrow. And he shot in the low 60s, for goodness sake. So I like him for the over 4.5, a little bit of a bounce back. And then I have this over on Tom Kim bogeys or worse as well. So let's get to the bogey category and show you where Tom Kim does not rate out well this year. So Tom Kim is number 159 in bogey avoidance. That's a sub-ideal to say the least. And the bogey average, I think, is going to go up to like 2.6, 2.7 per round, if not even slightly higher than that kind of number, which means that Tom Kim, who's already a below average player in that category, would project over that 2.6, that 2.7 number, if not over 3 per round. So I think there's some decent value with this sort of projection. And though we don't have a line for comparison, they have a lot of players that are of much better form and just higher tier players in general that are 2.5 and about even money. So you'd have to think that Tom Kim would be a value in that direction. And because we have a positive stance play and a fade mixed together, this does give us a full 3x payout. So that's the prize pick slip that we're going to go with here for the stream to give you guys an idea of exactly how I'm attacking this slate. And I'm going to try and be creative with the payouts a bit and try and get some fade slips mixed in, because I know we have the over on Victor, the over on Justin Thomas, but those are extreme examples. Like, those are some of the only positive stance plays that you'll see me playing. In general, I think fades are the way to go about the slate with the harder pins, slightly harder pins, and then also the wind becoming a little bit of a factor too. But JT, number 1 birdie maker, right? That's why we make that kind of exception. But to have the rest of the board at the same number, like 4.5 birdies, that feels like a little bit of a mistake as the guy that's in form and the player that's at the top of that category on the PGA Tour stats, like a Dietrich, like a Minwoo, like, I don't know, I don't want to pick on players in general, but there could be some unders that could really make sense on that board. You already know about me fading Pendrith strokes, but there are also some mid-tier players that maybe aren't in the best form that you could see me fading in my portfolio as well. Bogey or worse board, you saw me taking the over on Tom Kim, but there are a few other players that I was eyeing up for an over too, like maybe Benny Ann ends up making his way into my portfolio. Then I was looking at the fairway board. I do think the average goes down to like 8.5 per round, which if that's the case, there are some players here that could make sense for an under. Like Dietrich was one that stood out. The issue with him is that he has an early tee time, so he's not going to be playing in as much wind. So that's why I ended up not entering it before I got here on the stream. Could still sneak his way into some of my exposure. We'll have to see what the final decision ends up being. But like an Adam Scott, I'm trying to find him on here. I know he's on here somewhere. Like, he's at 8.5, and he's a below average accuracy player. There was another one on here. I know JT's the same way. Like, you could fade him if you wanted to for fairways. He's a below average accuracy guy, and he's at 8.5, which I think is going to be the average for tomorrow. So obviously, below average accuracy guy would project below that sort of number. Jason Days hasn't been the most accurate player this year, but I'm looking for somebody in particular, and maybe he was taken off the board, and that's why I'm not seeing him on here. I think that was probably the case. But like Dietrich fits that same sort of scenario where, I'm thinking about taking some unders with the windy conditions as well. So I think the value is on a lot of fades. Underdog board is pretty similar to prize picks in a lot of those categories. The issue with Underdog is that you have all these multipliers that you have to play, which in my opinion just makes the experience a little bit worse. It is worth noting that Sleeper has started to really adjust their pricing. They're just copying the sports books. They're copying sites like Underdog and using that for their pricing algorithm now. So it's no longer the kind of value that it was before. In fact, Sleeper has now become one of the worst sites that we can enter on for these pick'em sites. If I had to rank them, it's PrizePicks number 1, by far has the easiest to bet on lines, best payouts at this point, which is kind of crazy to say. At one point, they had the worst payouts of any of these big sites. Underdog's really annoying with the multipliers, but they're a close second. And then Sleeper went from first to pretty much dead last after adding that kind of a change. So you're going to see me focusing a lot of my exposure on prize picks, some Underdogs sprinkled in on top of that, then some matchup stuff posted as well. So let's go through some matchup stuff and then kick this thing off. So I have to meet a few buddies over at, we call it the Ave here in Delray Beach. We're going to have a few drinks. So I got to get out of here in the next 10 minutes. I promise them. But let's go through these two matchups I wanted to point out. So first off, we have Akshay Bhatia at plus 110. I'm taking him versus Robert McIntyre, and it's kind of a double-edged sword here. So I'm actually going to go to the matchup tool on Bet the Number, which kind of help us compare these two players apples to apples. Let's go Akshay Bhatia, and then let's find Robert McIntyre and go to round number 3. And what you'll see is that it's a tale of two different players. You had Bhatia, who gained a bunch of strokes off the tee and with his approach play. In fact, over 3 strokes in those two categories combined. But his short game, he lost 3 strokes to the field. So, just couldn't get anything to drop. I followed his round rather closely because I had his under on strokes. He did shoot 68, so he did go under that 68.5, which was really nice for us. I was going up against McIntyre, though, who lost strokes on approach. He was, about a neutral off the tee. And all week, if you take a look at their 2 stat profiles for the entire event, it's a lot of the same. I mean, Akshay is better in the 2 ball striking categories. Putting actually favors Akshay as well if you take a look at the entire event. But I think he's due for a bounce back, right? Losing this 3-stroke short game is not going to happen all that often. He's a bounce back. He's even just a neutral in those 2 categories. I like his chances to beat McIntyre, and especially when he's plus 110 to do so. So that's the first 2 ball. I don't have the odds on Hard Rock Bet quite yet, but if I can get plus 110 or better, I will for sure be playing that. And then the other one is this Hovland versus Aaron Rai. So let's put both of those in there. Let's start with Hovland on the left. Let's put Aaron Rai on the right side. And it's pretty much the exact same argument. So if we take a look at round number 3, you'll see that Victor Hovland gained 3 strokes on approach. Aaron Rai just gained ever so slightly in that category. But look at the short game between the two. Like, sure, Hovland gained 1.5 strokes putting. That was nice. He had been horrendous days 1 and 2. So it's nice to see a little bit of momentum there. But he wasn't overly good in the category. Aaron Rai, though, gained 4 strokes between the around the green and the putting. So that screams unsustainability. If we could look at the entire event this week, you'll see that Victor Hovland is one of the best players when it comes to the approach play, gaining over 2.7 shots gained approach per round, losing in the 2 short game categories. Whereas Aaron Rai is losing with the iron play, losing close to a stroke per round with the shots gained approach, and gaining close to 1.5 shots gained short game. And if you know Aaron Rai, you'll know that he's a ball striking first player, usually one of the better iron players. So kind of weird to see him losing all those strokes there. That is a big red flag. And him gaining 1.5 shots gained short game or 1.35, about that number right there, is well above his baseline. So you would say that he doesn't look like he's in form with this swing. He's over his head in the short game categories, which is not the way that you want to head into this kind of a matchup. So if you're telling me that Hovland's only minus 115, I think he should be a much more sizable favorite than that. Then I think that's worth mixing in as well. So I don't know if I would parlay them or anything. I would probably just bet them for straights. That's what I'm going to try and do in Hard Rock Bet, as long as I'm getting comparable, if not better, numbers on these two. And that's it for the round 4 live stream, guys. So of course, guys, for all the exposure I'm taking, you can find that on the Patreon page. You can find that with a link down below. And on top of that, I also have all the showdown stuff there as well. And look at my cat over there making a cameo. She's the best. She just likes hanging out. So I wasn't going to kick her out or anything during this. But you can also find the showdown sheet over there. And just to give you guys an idea of the top 5 highest owned players for showdown, you can see Fleetwood's at the top, Bradley, Henley in contention. Also, shout out to J-Day and Brian Harmon. They're number 4 in the showdown ownership rankings. I've got projected ownership, projected points for round 4 showdown, which do include the placement points in play, and my entire player pool too, which is, this is blacked out, of course, but on there for every single player that I have in the pool, I've got the reasoning for it there as well. So check that out on the Patreon page. But that's all I've got. Best of luck with all of your lineups, all of your bets that you're taking for Sunday. Hope to see you guys at the top end of those GPPs. I hope that we can cash out on all those different prop slips. And the good luck kitty is in the live stream, I guess. So I'll see you guys for all the content next week, and let's have ourselves a Sunday.